Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about everything that you need to know about the Peace Summit in Switzerland, the good, the bad, and the ugly. As you know, it was a two-day summit. 80 countries backed Ukraine's territorial integrity in this document. There were 92 countries participating. 80 countries have called for the territorial integrity of Ukraine to be the foundation of any peace agreement to end Russia's war in a communique issued on the second day, that's the final day, of their gathering in Switzerland. Russia was notably absent. They weren't invited. India, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates were among those that did not sign the final document, and there's a few other countries as well. I'll talk about them in just a moment. Okay, in the meantime, Biden was not there. The United States was represented by Kamala Harris. Support for Ukraine is our strategic interest. It's not charity, she said. That's exactly right, 100% correct. U.S. President Joseph Biden's support is unwavering. The people of Ukraine and its future is the United States' strategic interest. It's of observing such international norms and territorial integrity and independence. Okay, that's very fair. At the same time, Biden was at a fundraiser in Los Angeles where he was raising $30 million for his campaign. I know that he needs to raise money for his campaign. I understand that. This is in the LA Times, not a happy election, why this star-studded Hollywood fundraiser is so crucial for Biden. And here's George Clooney and Julia Roberts and Barack Obama and Biden. Okay, but it's just a bad look, especially when all the other world leaders or major world leaders tend to be represented there. Here is the president of Lithuania with Zelensky. Peace can be achieved only after full restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity. Absolutely right. That's a prerequisite that has to happen. Justin Trudeau, Peace Summit is not just about Ukraine, it's about all the countries of the world coming together to defend international law. That's also very true. Okay. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said that excluding Russia from the Peace Summit is the correct decision. He emphasized that peace can only be achieved when Russia adheres to all international principles and the UN Charter. Very true. And the foundation of this agreement was that Russia needs to respect the international borders of Ukraine and the principles of the UN Charter. So that's spot on. Norway has allocated millions of dollars to Ukraine to repair the energy sector. This was announced by Prime Minister of Norway at the Peace Summit. The Norwegian government will provide Ukraine with 1.1 billion kroner. Now, kroner are not the same as dollars. It's about 74 million, but 74 million to help repair the energy sector in Kharkiv will be useful. And so thank you to Norway. Now, 80 countries and 4 organizations signed the declaration of the Peace Summit. In particular, it does not include these countries: Brazil, okay, BRICS, right? India, BRICS, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Indonesia, South Africa, BRICS, and Thailand. These countries were represented at the Peace Summit at different levels. So some were at like the president or prime minister of the country level, and some by other levels. Now, what's interesting here is Brazil, India, and South Africa. Brazil, I'm going to show you what Luna said in just a moment, but before that, let's look at first South Africa. South Africa, I was in a video yesterday with Jana from Project Constantine. I asked her, this was before we actually were on the shills, I said, so what's it like in South Africa? I know the government tends to lean toward supporting Russia. Yes, yes, yes. The government leans very heavily toward supporting Russia. What about the people? Because often that's not the case. Often there's a difference between that. So she sent this to me. The Brent Hurst survey shows vast majority of South Africans condemn Russia, but yet the South African government supports Russia. 74.3% of South Africans believe that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is, quote, an act of aggression that must be condemned, unquote. This suggests that the South African government, which has refused to condemn the invasion, has even embarked on joint military exercises with Russia, is hopelessly out of touch with its voters. Putin likes to talk about how the whole, the majority of the world is with him. And so to some degree, Putin can claim that, because if you get India and you get China, you got a big chunk of the world, and then a number of African countries to go with that. But that's not most of the countries of the world. So it depends on how you want to spin that. Okay, Brazil. let's talk about Brazil. Brazilian President Lula da Silva said, "No, I don't defend Putin. Brazil was the first country to criticize Russia for the invasion of the country. What I do not do is take a side. My side is peace." Okay, if there's a victim and there's a perpetrator, and you say, "I'm not taking a side between the victim and the perpetrator. My side is peace," that's not really justice. My side is not taking Zelensky's side against Putin or Putin's side against Zelensky. Brazil has defined a position. We are willing to participate in any meeting that discusses peace if you have the two conflicting ones at the table. Okay, so this is him weaseling out. And Brazil, like India, is taking in as much Russian oil as they can possibly take in at wonderful prices. Okay, this Anton Gerashenko again, the second peace summit will be held in months, not years, according to Zelensky. Here's the summary of what happened. The main points of the joint communique of the peace summit: Ukrainian nuclear power plants and facilities, including Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, must be operated safely and securely under the full sovereign control of Ukraine in compliance with the IAEA principles. Any threat or use of nuclear weapons in the context of war is unacceptable. It was easy peasy for most countries to be able to get behind that. Second, Ukrainian agricultural products should be supplied safely and freely to interested third parties. Okay, so supply, Black Sea corridor kind of thing, getting the grain out. Most of the countries had no problem getting along with that as well. Full exchange of all prisoners of war. This is the third point. They only went for 3 out of the 10 points, just trying to get the low-hanging fruit. All deported and illegally displaced Ukrainian children, as well as other illegally detained civilians, must be returned to Ukraine. And you'd think that everybody can get behind that, but you'd be surprised that some countries can't get behind these 3 significant points. But that's what the peace conference entailed, essentially. Now, at the same time, this is big story number 2. Anton Gerashenko posted this. Did you feel it in your feeds? I did. So many bots and trolls in the last several days. Very large budgets seemed to be involved. There was a lot of activity. It seemed like there was more than normal. Well, this was also interesting. Kremlin bots, this is Jason J. Smart, distributed 120,000 posts with fake celebrity quotes overnight. They talked about cessation of support for Ukraine and the collapse of Europe. Like, this is an orchestrated campaign. Did she say this? Well, I don't know that she did. We are impoverished. It's time to forget about Ukraine. How about this one? Ukraine does not exist anymore. All our money went down the drain, says Messi. Well, why is Lionel Messi talking about this? Here's Sir Elton John. We have fallen into the Ukrainian trap. Now the EU is crumbling. Again, these are all made up. Angelina Jolie, Europe is impoverished. Politicians are getting crazier. There are corrupt officials in the European Parliament. Why is she talking about the European? Right, okay. So again, the long and short of that is that these are made up Kremlin bots distributing these posts. Okay, big story number 3. If that wasn't enough, we have Donald Trump, who's threatening to cut off aid to Ukraine prior to taking the White House as president-elect. I don't know how he would be able to do that legally, but okay. Former president and presumptive Republican nominee Donald Trump voiced strong criticism of American aid to Ukraine at a campaign rally in Detroit yesterday. Speaking at the Turning Point USA event, very, very MAGA Turning Point USA, Trump claimed that he would have the U.S. aid to Ukraine settled prior to taking the White House. Now, don't just take my word for it. Listen to him yourself.
I think Zelensky is maybe the greatest salesman of any politician that's ever lived. Every time he comes to our country, he walks away with $60 billion. And I like him. You know, on the impeachment hoax #1, he was very good. He said, no, the president didn't threaten me at all. He could have been a grandstander and said, I was threatened, right, Matt? He could have said, I was threatened. So I like him. But he's the greatest salesman of all time. He walks in. So now here's the beauty. He just left 4 days ago with $60 billion. And he gets home and he announces that he needs another $60 billion, else it never ends. It never ends. I will have that settled prior to taking the White House as president-elect. I will have that settled.
Okay, who's advising this guy? 4 days ago, nothing like that happened 4 days ago. And how can you have it settled before you take the White House without violating other laws when you are not supposed to be interacting diplomatically until such time as you get to the White House. Okay, at any rate, I'm sorry about that. It's deeply disappointing to see that Trump is doubling down on this position. Okay, this morning I showed you this. Ukraine, since the early 90s, invaded, well, nothing. Russia has invaded Chechnya and Georgia and Ukraine. Somebody pointed out we should have also added Moldova, which actually happened in the early 90s, 91 and 92, Transnistria. And so you're correct. That should also be on this list. Last little bit, Russia retreats from Kyiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, Kherson, Chernihiv, Snake Island, loses control of the Black Sea, Navy chased out of Crimea. Also, Russia, we are winning, and Ukraine should accept our every demand. Okay, thank you for the time, my friends. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.